All right, here in front of Terry Benedict's casino, Bellagio. Lovely vintage aesthetic. Gonna go play a cash game session, maybe 1-3, maybe 2-5. We'll see what's open. And yeah, let's get after it. As we take our seat, we can't help but feel a bit of the history here. One of my favorite movies ever, Ocean's 11, is filmed here, and there just seems to be a bit of an atmosphere about the Bellagio. We sit down at 2-5, we're in for $500, that's the max. And we waste no time when in our first hand of note, the button has opened to $15. We're going to grab some re-raising chips from the small blind and make it 60 to go with pocket kings. Always nice to pick up a strong hand right at the start of a session to kind of settle in and calm the nerves a bit. This is going to be a fairly wide open from the button, so we are going to be 3-betting nice and linearly, fairly wide as well for value with our good hands and our better hands. So not surprising to see the big blind hit the tank. His name is David, he's a vlog watcher from Boston, and most likely he's considering a 4-bet here. Eventually he reluctantly lets his cards go, and we're loving this spot of course with pocket kings. And still sort of loving it when the button decides to 4-bet to 200. Now we only started the hand $500 effective. That's only 100 big blinds in this game. This is my first orbit at the table, so I don't have any reads. But a 4-bet does look fairly strong. But then again, this is a button versus small blind spot, super wide configuration. If he's got it, he's got it. I'm all in for $500. The button pauses a bit to make sure the dealer has put the all-in button in front of me before he makes the call. We're going one time in our first pot of the day, which is over $1,000. The flop comes out 4-4-3 rainbow, the turn is a 6, and the river is another 4. We should be good unless the button has pocket aces. Sigh. We run into it, first hand of the session, with the ultimate pre-flop cooler. All the atmosphere I just talked about has been sucked right out of the building as we ship our stack across the table to the 8 seat. Definitely not the way we wanted to start the session. I'm going to add on to get back to a full stack of 500, and it seems like we have our work cut out for us today. So we're looking to bounce back after that last hand. A couple of players are away from the table, so we're playing this one 6-handed. It doesn't snow much in Las Vegas, but there's been at least enough snow to salvage together 2 black snowmen in the hijack. The low jack has opened it up to $15. This is the same player from last hand. I'm trying to eliminate some cold calls from my game as the rake structure of live poker just sort of eats you up when you play a lot of small pots. That, combined with the fact that I need to get revenge on the low jack, leads me to 3-bet up to $45. This is probably a pip too wide, but we get what we want when it folds back around to him and he puts in the call. So we're going to play heads up in position with nearly $100 in the middle, and the flop comes out ace, jack, deuce, rainbow. Not great for pocket eights, but when he checks it on over to us, we're gonna have stronger hands on this board like aces, jacks, and ace, jack suited at a much higher frequency than he will. So that leans me towards range betting this board for a small size. I pick around a third pot for $30. He doesn't think too long before flicking in the call. So there's 155 in the middle when the turn is the 7 of clubs. He checks on over to us, and I think our hand falls pretty firmly into our category of hands that have showdown value. They just want to see a cheap river. So I decided to check it back. I'll be doing this also with a hand like king jack, pocket kings, weaker ace-x like ace-10 for some pot control. So I check, and the dealer rolls off the 4 of hearts. It doesn't really change much, so when the low jack bets out for $100, it's a pretty chunky bet, around 2/3 the size of the pot. I just don't think players are bluffing in 3-bet pots enough. Perhaps I would consider bluff catching to a smaller size, like 75. But I decided to make the discipline lay down. So we've lost our first 2 hands of the night, and I gotta tell you, the vintage aesthetic is way overrated. Our next hand we pick up a few orbits later in the low jack, where we peel king queen offsuit. Now, an argument can be made for folding here in these high rake structures of live poker, and because our table was pretty pro heavy, a ton of 3-betting going on. However, the only two non-pros in the game are David, the vlog watcher to my left, and the big blind, who we now need to get double revenge on. So I decide to open it up. David comes along for the ride with a call in the hijack. The cutoff is a Brazilian pro who sees the opportunity to play against two fish in position. He makes the call, so we're going 3 ways to a flop out of position with around $50 in the middle. And the flop comes out queen 5-3 all hearts. We don't have a heart, we do have top pair though, so probably an above average flop for us. I am going to start with a check out of position against 2 players. David pretty quickly checks in the hijack, and our Brazilian brother in the cutoff checks it back as well. So we're still 3 ways to the turn when we see the 8 of clubs. I'm fairly confident we have the best hand still. I'd like to start denying some equity against some lower pairs that have a heart, like pocket 4s, pocket 6s, maybe pocket 7s. So I decide to bet out small for $15. David in the hijack thinks for a bit. He's expressed to me that he'd like to make the vlog, and perhaps he's taking his shot to do so here when he reaches into his stack and assembles raising chips and bumps it up to $55. Cutoff gets out of the way pretty quickly, and this isn't the most comfortable spot in the world. Sure, we have top pair, but I don't see people raising turns super often without a very strong hand, and I don't see people fluffing 3 flush boards all that often. I haven't seen David get out of line, and it's going to be pretty uncomfortable to play rivers out of position. So I decide to believe David, and I'm going to make a very tight laydown here. He says a phrase that you never really want to hear after making a big fold.
A shot for the vlog?
Sure. Wow, nice man. David owns our soul, semi-bluffing the turn with a gut shot. Honestly, very surprising to see him show up with Jack-10 offsuit here, especially without a heart. Credit to him for getting involved. Perhaps I shouldn't be making any big laydowns against vlog watchers, but credit to him. He thought it was too easy to take my money up in the Northeast. He wanted to fly all the way to Las Vegas to own my soul. And to be fair, he definitely did on this hand. Props to you, David. You're a very nice guy. And we're feeling pretty dejected after losing our first 3 pots of the night. I'm not so proud of this next hand, but let's talk about it. It starts off with a low jack open to $15. We're in the small blind, and we're going to look down at a very pretty holding in the form of the queen of spades and the ace of diamonds. Of course, going to be raising it up here. I choose a 4x size, 15 times 4 for all your math wizards out there. It's going to be $60 to go from us. Now, I mentioned in the last hand that this table is very Euro heavy, very pro heavy. In fact, we're currently playing 7-handed. And at the table we have a Brazilian pro, 2 French pros, an American pro, an American tourist, who's currently sitting with about $600 of my hard-earned money. And the big blind for this hand is an Englishman. I think he's a liar because he says he's from Norwich, which definitely isn't a real place. And I think he's also lying to me about why he's in Vegas. He says he's here for work, but he's wearing a hoodie and a crossbody bag, as well as some AirPods. So I'm 100% sure this guy is a pro, and a very aggressive one at that. He's been at the table for less than 20 minutes, and I've already seen him 3-bet a handful of times, 4-bet once, and he's been throwing the straddle on pretty regularly. He keeps glancing up at the monitor that holds the wait list, and I'm fairly certain he's on the list for 510. So when he moves all in for $325, I would snap fold to a lot of players here, probably most, but there's something about this guy that I'm having a hard time getting away from it. It's not a full stack of 500, it's only 325, which is around 65 big blinds. If we pull up the solver for the same configuration for a 75 big blind all in and a 50 big blind all in, you can see calling off with ace queen offsuit here is losing for both, and it's losing quite a bit. I've been at the table for about an hour and a half and I haven't dragged a pot yet. Perhaps a little bit of tilt is creeping into my thought process, as I just don't think this guy can have a strong hand at the frequency at which he's been 3-betting and 4-betting. I haven't really decided what I want to do at this point. Calling seems pretty bad, but I really don't want to fold and get pushed around by this guy. Eventually, after a while, he starts talking, and I'll let that interaction play for you guys now. I think it's close. Where are you from?
What you got?
Huh?
What you got?
I have no idea what you're saying. What I got? Wow. I think it's close. Where are you from?
England.
England? Wow. Alright.
like,
He says good call probably, which relaxes me a little bit, but the jack in the window is not great. Ace jack, which is one of the hands I was hoping he was shoving, gets there. We do make a pair of aces on the turn, which I guess is good, but he probably wouldn't say good call if he had kings or queens. Perhaps we're winning against pocket tens, but unfortunately we see the bad news when the big blind rolls over ace king of clubs. We're outpipped in a pot that was over $650. We do have the opponent covered, barely, but we've been getting pretty much crushed so far. I consider the idea of calling it a day, but I'm not sure if I have enough content at this point to make a vlog, and I came out here to make some content. So I take a quick break, have some food, I add on for another $400, I'm in the game for $1,400. It's gonna be hard to get unstuck for the day here, but let's give it a go. This hand kind of melted my brain in the moment, really wasn't sure about it, so I'm curious to find out what you guys think. It starts off with our English pro friend from last hand opening the low jack up to $15. We are on the button with pocket nines, typically a hand that I'm going to be playing very aggressively, especially in position and 3-betting, but 2 of the 3 non-pros at the table were in the blinds. So I didn't feel super good about 3-betting and playing heads up with Todd Cantwell and trying to drive out the blinds. So I decided to put in the flat on the button here. This kind of accomplishes our goal when David in the small blind comes along with a call. The big blind gives up his cards, so we're going 3 ways in position to a flop, which is pretty much the gin flop without making a set for pocket nines. It comes 7-6 deuce with 2 clubs. It's always hard to flop an overpair when you have a 4-sider, so when we do, it's usually a pretty good spot. It checks on over to us, and while the low jack could have some overpairs that he's checking on this board, I'd like to size up, get some equity denial against flush draws and 2 random overcards. I do think ace-high hands are probably check calling this street anyways, so I'd like to get more money in the pot. I bet out $30 into 45, 2/3 pot, and our friend David in the small blind might be trying to cement his debut on the vlog and make it an absolute certainty that he's in this video, because he decides to assemble chips totaling an amount that is greater than $30 when he check raises up to 70. Now this is a weird spot, but he did show us that bluff earlier, and if he's flopped a set, then it's just really good advertising on him because I'm definitely not believing this check raise. There are tons of draws that could be on the board. We do block 9-8, but hands like 5-4, 5-8 suited, or even any hand containing 2 clubs is a draw that he might play aggressively. We are fairly deep, so I'm not in love with reopening the action with a 3-bet on this flop. I don't really think there's much of a decision here. He's made it so small to continue. I decide to flick in the call with a black chip, sort of looking to make my life a little easier when calculating pot size later. So we're heads up to the turn, which is an overcard to our nines. It comes the king of hearts. King X of clubs just took the lead from us. So I'm not in love with this card, but to be honest, any card that wasn't a 9 or maybe a deuce, I wasn't going to be in love with. Even though I may not like the turn card, David seems to like it enough to continue barreling as he reaches into his stack and puts out the double barrel of $100. It's a little north than half pot, not a very large size. Again, I don't think raising accomplishes much here. I could see an argument for just letting our hand go at this point, but the guy raised the turn with Jack 8 earlier. If he has a hand better than mine, then he's going to at least capture this one more street of value from me. I slide forward a stack of red to put in the call, so we're going to the river in a pot that has nearly $400 in it, hoping to see the 9 of spades one time, and the dealer obliges, although when I look across the table, she might be a little bit confused because the 9 of spades looks like it's upside down. In fact, it is the 6 of spades. All in all, a decent card for us. It reduces the number of set and 2-pair combos that he could have on the flop. However, a hand like 6x of clubs did just jump ahead of us to take the lead. I'm honestly not sure what I'm going to do facing a triple barrel. These lines are very underbluffed, even though he's chosen fairly small sizes with his check raise and his turn barrel. But David's put us through enough agony today. After thinking for nearly 40 seconds, he checks. We're going to check it on back. Perhaps I could bet small on this river for value, but it seems pretty thin. He announces that he has a 7, and I tell him that they're no good and roll over my 9s. He's a vlog watcher. Don't think I need to make him show here. With that, we are dragging in our first pot of the night. It feels good to drag in a pot as we have been playing for over 2 hours at this point. We take a bit of a weird line under-repping our hand pre-flop, and we get to extract a little bit extra value. So we're looking to gain some momentum after winning that last pot, and I can't think of a better hand to do that with than pocket aces. We've raised it up from under the gun to $15. The middle position player is called on our left. It is no longer David, but it is another recreational player that has taken his seat. Likes to call a lot, probably a bit too wide. So pretty happy when we get to play heads up with him, even though it's a little ridiculous that all the Euro pros choose to stop 3-betting when I have aces. Regardless, we go heads up out of position to a flop of Queen Jack 6 with 2 spades. We have the ace of spades, which is going to reduce a lot of the flush draw combos he can have. Now, oftentimes I will start with a check out of position, but I thought this player is more likely to put chips in as call than as a bluff. So as played, I decided to assemble some chips and choose a large size of $20 into 35. We're on 2/3 pot, and we get pretty much snap called by the MP. I think we're way ahead of his range when he does this, as he doesn't consider raising. So when we see the 10 of clubs on the turn, I have some mixed feelings about it. On one hand, the middle position player is going to make 2-pair a lot with Queen 10 or Jack 10. But on the other hand, we are the only player that could probably have Ace King in this configuration, as I would expect most players to raise that before the flop. Another important detail that I missed in game is that when we have the Ace of Spades, we would prefer barreling to bluff catching. This is because when we check, having the Ace of Spades reduces a lot of those bluff combos that we're looking to bluff catch from. So I think if I could have this hand back, I would just go ahead and bet the turn. But as played, I check, looking to get a little bit more information from the MP player. And we're definitely going to get some information. I'm not sure how to interpret it when he stacks together some chips and assembles a bet of $60. It's a large bet, 80% the size of the pot. It doesn't feel great, but he could still be betting some hands for value and as semi-bluffs that are worse than ours, like King Queen or King Jack. So I think it's too early to abort at this juncture. I put in the call, and we see a tricky 8 of diamonds roll off on the river. Any 9 now makes a straight. I'm not sure how many combos of 9x he's going to have, other than 9x of diamonds or possibly Queen 9 suited. So I decided to check it on over in flow, looking to evaluate his river size. And he picks a fairly chunky one when he puts out $125 into the $195 pot. Now, I don't love this spot at all. Like I mentioned before, we should probably just barrel through the turn because our hand doesn't really work that great as a bluff catcher. We do double block the nuts in the form of Ace King, and we should probably be the only player that can have Ace King in this formation. I'm tilting fairly hard after winning 1 pot in 3 hours of playing. So if I'm going to be honest with you guys, folding wasn't even a consideration here. I'm taking on this river considering bluff shoving for around $500. I felt like we were the only one that could have Ace King, so that option did feel appealing to me. But then I remembered some of the other hands I saw this player play, and I talked myself out of it, convincing myself that he wouldn't fold a 9 or even a hand like Queen 10. If I'm not going to rip it here, I think I just need to be folding. But as played, I put in the call expecting to lose quite a bit, but I wasn't expecting to lose to Ace King of clubs. What a bizarre hand for the middle position player to show up with. He did 3-bet pre-flop, floated on the flop, and got there on the turn. I show the MP that he could have got a lot more money from me if he 3-bet pre-flop, as I would have been happy getting it in. Instead, we take this hand post-flop, most likely misplayed every single street. Not proud of this one, not proud of the session overall, as we continue to dump some chips. I've been at the table for nearly 4 hours at this point and have made friends with the player to my right. His name is Stefan, he's a French pro from Lyon, but we haven't gotten involved in a pot together yet. So when Steph opens the cutoff and there's a recreational in the small blind, I take the opportunity to try and give him some action. So I make a pretty loose call with Jack 7 suited on the button here. The small blind completes, and the big blind, who's another French pro, who's actually just coming back from the bathroom, spoils the fun a little bit when he puts in the call as well. So we're going 4 ways in position with a pretty bad hand. Until the flop comes Jack 7-6 rainbow, we flop top 2 pair. We go from having a speculative holding to having what is almost certainly the best hand. The blinds check and flow to Steph. He disappoints me by checking it over to me. Looks like we're going to have to build this pot ourselves. We are multi-way, and I don't want to lose our customers. I size down to $20. And while it is expensive to live in Paris, it seems like the big blind can afford the $20 to make the call. Steph gets out of the way. We don't accomplish our goal of playing a pot against him. But Americans are bad at geometry. Paris, Lyon, same thing to me. So I'm still excited to be seeing a turn, and a little extra excited when the turn is a board pairing 7. We make a full house, which is great news, but possibly even better news is when the big blind seems like he's considering a lead on this board, and he comes through for us in a big way when he leads for half pot $50 into 100. Now theoretically, of course, when the middling card pairs, this is typically going to be better for the big blind than for my range, but nobody told the big blind that theoretically I have the nuts in this hand. There's no way this super aggressive French pro is ever flatting jacks pre-flop, so it's now just a question of how we get all the money in. I haven't topped up from losing that aces hand, so I didn't start the hand very deep. I have around $260 left behind right now. If I just call the turn, there'll be 200 in the middle, and I'll have about a pot-sized bet left. If I were out of position, I may consider raising this turn, but I'm very confident that we'll be able to get all the money in on the river. So we're going to be seeing a river in position with 200 in the middle, and it is the brick 3 of clubs. 4-5 does complete for a straight, which is a hand that I would love for him to have. I know no matter what he does, I will be saying all in, but I am hoping that he does bet a reasonable size so that my shove won't be for much more, and he'll be priced in to call. The big blind is not going to bet a reasonable size. He's going to bet a very unreasonable size when he slides forward 2 black chips and makes it $200 to go. Now I only have 211 in my stack, so I don't think there's much of a decision what to do here. I saved the table some time posturing because I'm not sure if there's a single hand that he has where he could fold for $11. I announced that I'm all in, and he snap folds. It's pretty obvious that he just had a stone bluff until he starts talking to Steph in French about the spot, and he tells him he has ace-7. I asked his neighbor this because he seemed to flash him a card, and his neighbor corroborated the story that he folded a 7. Obviously, it's hard to bluff for $11 more on the river, but I don't know, maybe the French are just a bunch of liars. Either way, it's a super strange hand. One of the recreational players that was sitting in the game busts shortly after. This wasn't the best game selection today on my part, but if people are folding for $11 more on the river, I'm definitely outmatched. I decided I've swam with the sharks for long enough today. It's time to get a rack and get out of here. Yeah, so you guys saw the session, 2-5 at Bellagio, in for 14, out for 6. So down 800 on that session. The first 500 loss, kings versus aces, very standard, but really mad at myself that I couldn't just find the fold with ace-queen. Yeah, it's just a punt, just to be fair. Just a complete spew, so that accounts for the rest of the losses. So maybe just feeling a little bit out of my depth, to be honest. A lot of Euro pros at that table, so got out of there. And now we're gonna walk over to, see it in the background, to the Aria, which you guys will see next session. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace. All right, that session might have been painful to watch, so here is a low quality video of the Bellagio fountain show I took for you guys. Hopefully you enjoy.